What's happening, guys? Oh, looks like I've gone and done a thing. And although I will put a full video together on my Ford F150 that I've recently traded my Ram 1500 in for, I wanted to talk a little bit about why I have moved away from Ram. So let's just dive into this. First and foremost, let me give you the specs of this truck. A 5.7 e-torque quad cab and a two-wheel drive. It came from the factory with 321 gears. That's the spec of the truck. But to dive into it further as to the why I got rid of it, electrical problems would top the list, although each one of these reasons is at the top of a list for me in terms of frustration, meaning that any one of them could have been reason enough. But one, electrical problems. The Uconnect system, incredibly glitchy. That to me was a big issue. It was very inconsistent. It would blank out at times. Very weird. And that particular issue led me to remember some of the electrical issues that I had with my Hellcat. Was this going to be a body control module? Is this thing going to leave me stranded on the side of the road? What else is to come? So we'll just leave the electrical issue thing there, but there were some other things that kind of tie into that, talking about the e-torque system. But second to that, mechanical issues. The truck had developed what seemed like, or sounded like, I should say, a cam phaser rattle on diesel. The truck only had 26,000 miles on it. It felt like, to me, that should not have been an issue that was coming up. Add to that a very annoying squeak that I could never really pinpoint, but sounded like it was coming from somewhere on the passenger side lower portion of the engine. Was this clacking on diesel? Was that a potential lifter failure? I don't know, but at that early of mileage, you wouldn't have expected it, but stranger things have happened, I suppose. And because I am so in tune, if you will, with tuning and knowing how these engines work, well, I knew that whatever that sound was, although it was extremely intermittent with the squeak and extremely predictable with that cam phaser clattering sound, I knew it was time to start looking forward. And again, to take that truck to the dealership and say, man, the thing has this kind of a weird sound on diesel, to be told that that would be normal was exactly what I was expecting to hear. So that was enough to unnerve me enough. But second to that, we had talked about electrical issues in the e-torque system. It's how the truck drove with the e-torque system. There was never ever a performance gain with the e-torque system, but it did feel like it was, well, it would drag the engine down in some situations. When the thing felt like it needed to charge or under certain partial throttle driving conditions, you would hear this thing kind of whining, and well, you kind of made me wonder whether or not the thing was going to fly apart at some point. I read on forums, and I get that these systems can be noisy, but I think you get where I'm coming from with this. It's an added bit of complexity to a system that really didn't need it, that wasn't offering any performance gain, and quite frankly was making me a bit nervous with some of the noises that it would make. I'm sure that it does something really well, and it helps along with the start-stop feature, that auto start-stop thing that they do when you come to a stop sign. You get where I'm going with this, though. If that's the only thing that motor did hanging off the top of this engine is to be a starter motor, and it made that much racket and kind of made me feel a bit unnervy, well, that's a reason enough to split. Another weird driving characteristic was the fact that if the truck was not in sport mode, the truck would put itself into a neutral condition upon stopping in normal drive mode. And what that means is you would come to a stoplight and your foot is on the brake. You got to lift up your foot and get into the accelerator pedal, but the truck was basically dead. It was like it was slack, almost like it had stalled, and then you put your foot on the accelerator and then it goes. Of course, the engine was still running, and this condition did not happen in tow haul mode, but it was not very normal feeling. Like typically you take your foot off the brake a little bit and the truck would inch forward. I know this one does, and other automatic transmission vehicles that I've driven, that's how they act. It just didn't act like a normal car or a normal truck. And that was driving me nuts. And it was just this ever evolving, ever moving target as far as what that truck was going to do to drive me absolutely crazy or make me feel like it was not going to be a wise decision to keep that thing long term. But the big thing for me, well, it was the build quality. Guys, I cannot stress this enough. When it comes to being a solid vehicle, the Ram, well, I don't think that it's at the top of most folks' list. Now, the DT Ram is significantly better than the DS, and that is absolutely for sure. But even then, interior quality wasn't that great. The truck was developing a lot of cricks and things like that well, it was just embarrassing. You have somebody getting into your truck, a client, my wife, and things are rattling around. And speaking of my wife, this is something that really, this is the straw that broke the camel's back. Smoking hot wife hops into the truck weighing all of 120 pounds. And we're driving down the road and she reaches up to the sun visor to flip it down to check herself out and to, get all geared up. The freaking visor falls out of the ceiling of that truck and it's just kind of dangling there by a wire. How embarrassing is that? That to me was what set it off. I mean, add to that the fact that, well, everything else that you could put into this pot of gumbo of headaches that this truck was causing me, or at least anxieties that it was flaring up, that thing had to go. So I traded in on this F-150 that you see behind me. And I will be talking a bit more about this truck in its own video, but I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about the Mopar situation, mainly because I know what you guys are already saying. I can't believe you left Mopar. I can't believe you did. I get it. I know it. But there's also an equal number of very vocal folks that are saying, I can't believe it took you this long to get into another Ford. So guys, with that, I hope it answers the question of why I moved away from Dodge, from Ram, and got into this F-150. Post up your comments. Let me know what you're thinking. And we'll catch you guys on the next one where I'm talking specifically about this truck. That's a wrap, guys. Adios.